Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation. Before we go ahead and kick off the presentation, I wanted to cover a bit of housekeeping information with all of you. Today's webinar will be recorded, so keep an eye on your inbox in the days following the event for a link to that recording, as well as some links that we'll talk about in today's presentation to make them easier for you to find. Also, if you have any questions or comments for our presenters today, please feel free to direct them via the question window or chat window, and we'll do our best to save some time at the end of today's presentation to cover any of those questions. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass over control to Grace Krokidas, who's going to take us through today's presentation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. My name is Grace Krokidas, and I'm the VP of Corporate Marketing here at Liquidware. I don't usually do our public webinars. You are usually hearing from one of our excellent technical people. But today, we thought we would cover some overall global trends that will be having an impact on your business. So this will be less of a technical deep dive and more of an overall picture of what is happening today and how Liquidware fits in. So let's start off with a little bit about Liquidware to explain why we are in a unique position to discuss how digital workspace management has become essential to succeeding in a digital transformation. So Liquidware was founded in 2009, and our mission from the get-go was to transform the ways that desktops are delivered in organizations. As you can see from this timeline, we've been at or ahead of every major milestone involving Windows desktops for more than a decade. So I'm not going to go over this timeline in detail, but I think you get, at a glance, how deep and wide our experience in this industry goes. And by the way, 2021 was our best year yet for both revenue growth and new customer acquisition. So Liquidware is an established company. It's got a proven track record of success with enterprise customers, and we have pretty much seen everything when it comes to Windows desktops. So, digital transformation. And we've been hearing that term for years now, and it's still splashed all over the internet. But what is it really? Is it a real thing or just a marketing buzzword? Well, the classic definition states that digital transformation is the adoption of digital technology by a company to improve business processes, add value for customers, and to promote innovation. And of course, doesn't that sound great? Everybody wants that. But how do you get there, and how do you make this happen? Well, let's start by breaking this down a little bit more. All right, so digital transformation relies on 6 key technologies, and these include artificial intelligence, machine learning, the Internet of Things, 5G networks, edge computing, and cloud. These technologies are the building blocks of digital transformation, and they're going to allow you to re-engineer your business in a big way. So let's see how these technologies all play a role in making that happen. So these technologies are radically going to change the dynamics of 3 key areas that affect your businesses. The first is data, and in this case, going from limited data to big data. And not only will organizations change the way that they collect data, they're also going to expand the number of sources for that data. And that's where the Internet of Things come in. More and more computing devices are being embedded in everyday objects. And these objects then send vast amounts of data back to the company. Another major source of big data is social media, which provides tons of demographic and consumer behavior information. So another area to be affected is where workers work. So second trend is work from anywhere. Workers are going to transition more and more from desk-bound situations to mobile. And essentially it's going to be work from anywhere scenarios are going to predominate. They'll collect data directly and immediately from sources, thus improving the accuracy of that data. And they're going to also retrieve more data more quickly in this model to improve delivery of services. So finally, and definitely not least, smart applications. Applications will increasingly incorporate artificial intelligence and machine learning. They'll not only be able to handle the vast amounts of data that we're going to be collecting, they're going to also organize it, spot trends and patterns, and rapidly provide the results of this kind of analysis. So in order to understand the impact here, let's look at how workers have handled the collection, input, analysis, and repurposing of data in the past. In this traditional model, workers are the gatekeepers of the data. How much data and the quality of the data is determined by the human agent. And the sources of that data are limited to what they can interact with. And once the data is collected, it was input on a PC at a desk in the office, for the most part. The data was then turned over to specialists who processed or analyzed the data. And then once this data got repackaged, so to speak, it gets used by the business to make organization-wide decisions. So in this model, limited data, gatekeeper staff, office bound, right? But let's compare that now to the digitally transformed process, okay? Here, the collection of data is increasingly done through smart and embedded devices. The scale of the data will explode exponentially. Data is not only collected from a greater scope and diversity of sources, it'll also come in a variety of many more formats with much more image, video, and graphic files, as well as text and numbers. And smarter and more robust applications will take over the work of gathering, organizing, analyzing, and repurposing the data. So all of this changes the nature of workers' jobs. They no longer spend their time on manual tasks, but they're going to move upstream, and they'll be required to perform more creative, analytic, and problem-solving tasks. And they must be prepared to interpret and act on data, not simply report it. Another major change for workers in this setting, they will be more mobile. Work from anywhere will be the predominant work model. Jobs will move into the field, closer to operations, stakeholders, and customers. And workers will take their technologies to remote locations. They'll use portable, smart devices to directly interact with consumers. And they're going to spend much more time in problem solving and creative endeavors on behalf of that organization. So workers in this model will need powerful end user computing at the locations where they perform work. And the processing of that work will need to take place closer to where they do it, and not travel all the way back to a remote data center. And that's where 5G, edge computing, and cloud come in. They're the building blocks of the infrastructure that'll be needed to bring robust end user computing to mobile workers. So all this sounds really great, right? And it is, if you're ready to embark on a digital transformation. But from what we're hearing, most companies are not having the easiest time of making this transition. And what's the big roadblock? Well, it's that dramatic change in how workers need to perform their jobs. They'll be required to do more, faster, and with pinpoint accuracy. So this level of change challenges the IT legacy approaches that you may have put in place over years. You'll need to find new, better ways of equipping all of your workers with all the technologies they need, when, how, and where they need them. Their end user computing resources are going to need to be up to the task of keeping them productive. So there is a way to do this. But let's first look at the way not to do this. PCLM. So for decades, a process called PC Lifecycle Management has been the predominant way to provision desktops. Traditionally, as new versions of chips and Windows operating systems rolled out, organizations simply replaced old hardware with new. The problem with PCLM is that workers get new hardware through a subjective, piecemeal process, which is hampered by budgets, an elaborate approval process, and quite frankly, by politics. So some groups get the latest and greatest hardware and others don't. And this approach is just not going to cut it in a digitally transformed organization. So why is PCLM not going to cut it? Because it doesn't allow you to create an overall workspace strategy to support your workers. This is a zero-sum game, and it relies on a one-to-one replacement of devices. So you end up with exactly what you've had for years, whether or not it makes sense to continue to do this. There's no opportunity to create an overall strategy to enhance and optimize workspace provisioning. So you have no comprehensive view of all the machines, all applications, operating systems, and all users. Okay, so the organization relies on a limited or subjective information when deciding on the investments and how to apply them. So without this comprehensive view, your resources can be misapplied, with some groups getting too much and others getting shortchanged. And you can even spend too much money and still not get the best result as far as making sure all your workers have what they need to do their jobs. You also leave the door open to incomplete maintenance and potential security issues. So, to equip workers with end user computing resources they need, digitally transformed organizations must evolve to scalable provisioning of portable, cloud-ready workspaces. And here, digital workspace management is the key to getting that done. All right, so what does it take to deliver workspaces in a digitally transformed organization? Well, you're going to need to meet these requirements at a minimum. Your workspace resources must be equally provisioned so that all workers get all the resources they need for their jobs. Your workspaces must support performance requirements for work from anywhere, anytime operation. The workspaces must be tailored to the workers based on their use cases and their security needs. And productivity is key. No lags, no downtime. Upgrades need to be implemented with no disruption to users' productivity. Your workspace infrastructure must be scalable to meet changing conditions. And optimally, you want to build on existing IT investments, enhance those investments, and future-proof those investments. So this is what an infrastructure to provision workspaces in a digitally transformed organization will look like. And I know many of you are extremely familiar with this architecture. But the challenge is that you may have a lot of different versions of this architecture deployed in your organization today. You may have some VMware, Citrix, RDSH, you got Windows physical machines, and maybe you've introduced Amazon or Azure Cloud. Digital transformation is going to require that you make these silos work seamlessly together to get to the flexibility and scalability you're going to need. So this is where Liquidware's digital workspace management solutions come in. Our solutions are purpose-built to streamline workspace provisioning for a digitally transformed organization. And they work for all major workspace platforms, getting you past a lot of the obstacles that come with those siloed environments. That means you can get your current investments and future investments to work together seamlessly. So over the next few slides, we're going to cover how you use the specific Liquidware solutions at each point to move forward. So how do you get started? And here's a little checklist of some of the key steps that you will take in re-engineering workspace provisioning for a digitally transformed environment. So the very start is pick a project. And the classic projects that we've seen over and over again is a Windows operating system migration, and with Windows 11 on the horizon, this is a good time to think about that one. Other cases are physical to virtual, virtual to virtual, or virtual to cloud, some kind of cross-platform migration. And finally, if you are requiring to launch a work from anywhere option for your workers, that's another good place to start when you want to think about how you need to change your mode of provisioning workspaces. So the very first step here, and this is an essential step, and you can't bypass this, is to get that comprehensive picture of your current desktop estate for that group of users that you want to move forward with regard to workspace provisioning. You're going to design the workspace images in the infrastructure and create an application strategy. And in fact, these two go hand in glove, because your application strategy is going to dictate how you design those workspace images and how complex that is, and therefore what kind of infrastructure is going to be required to support them. The next two steps, virtualize your user profiles and virtualize your applications, are critical here, because that allows you to leverage different types of architectures and essentially reduce the management burden on your people and make for a much more flexible environment. So then after you've gotten through those steps, you want to pick the best platform for that use case, whatever it is. You're going to take the step to migrate to the new platform, which hopefully you're going to be leveraging an automated migration tool solution to help you do that. And then finally, the last three steps, once you're in production, you need to validate, you need to troubleshoot, and you need to optimize. And we're going to go over that in a little more detail in the next few slides. Here we start with step number one, and you picked your project, or more likely your project has picked its own time and place and it's not something you have to deal with. And so what's that next critical step? Well, you have to begin with getting that comprehensive picture of your existing environment. So what you want is to know all the users, all the machines, operating systems and versions, apps and versions, and the platforms you're currently using. And this is both known and unknown. And you'd be surprised at how many companies we've been to where they've had unknown things running in their environment. And that's where Liquidware Stratosphere UX comes in. Stratosphere UX is our digital experience monitoring solution. It uses lightweight agents that can be deployed easily into your existing environment to collect all this data. And within a few days, you can have an entire inventory of all machines, users, applications, etc., deployed in your environment. Once you have this inventory and level of detail, now you're starting to work with objective data that you need to create a delivery strategy and design that modern workspace environment. And you can define user group use cases. So you determine which applications belong in your organization and which do not. And then you can start creating accurate workspace images to plan out the infrastructure. So all of this gets you through the first 4 points of that checklist. And this represents a major turnabout from the PCLM process. So because you're replacing a subjective, inefficient, ad hoc process with a new process that uses objective data to help you efficiently deliver workspaces to your employees. So here, now we're going on to those next two equally important steps, which is to virtualize your user profiles and virtualize your applications. And these are two very important tactics to execute when you're trying to move to a modern workspace provisioning infrastructure. Because when you do this, you gain a critical advantage, and that advantage is portability. Portable profiles and portable applications, they're able to be delivered on demand to anywhere the user is logged in. So for any Windows operating system version, including Windows 11. And this is essential from work from anywhere computing. Another major gain here is that profiles and applications also become much easier to track and manage. And this improves security, especially when the device the user is on may or may not be company property. I know that it's likely that many of you have gone down this path with solutions that didn't get the job done or didn't get the job done as you were expecting. But Liquidware's Profile Unity for user environment management and FlexApp for application layering are proven, sophisticated, and road-tested solutions. And they've successfully delivered results for enterprises for years now. And again, these solutions are platform agnostic, so they're going to work across all your workspace platforms. So let's recap the advantages of gaining user and application portability for a digital transformation. Users and applications can move across platforms, okay? They're physical, virtual, back and forth. This speeds the migration projects and in fact allows you to use automated solutions for your migration projects. Users stay productive. They log off the old hardware, they log into the new, no downtime. No vendor lockdown. So basically these profiles and the applications start moving across those silos that you may have had built up in your organization. This portability supports seamless work from anywhere, okay, because where they log in, whatever device, they're still going to get the same applications, they're still going to get the same user profile. The users can coexist across multiple Windows operating systems, okay. The profiles and policies stay relevant even with Windows operating system updates. And you're reducing complexity in the environment and you're making managing that environment a lot easier and recovery a lot easier. And finally, and this is a big one again, you're boosting security because you're able to better track what your users are doing, how your user profiles are working, and how your applications are working, and what versions you're running. You get all that insight. So it's a huge boost to security. So once you've migrated users from one platform to another, and you've made it into production, everything appears to be working great. So what's next? Well, for starters, you want objective evidence that it is working as great as you think it is, okay? You want to be able to validate that the workspaces you just launched perform as good or better than legacy desktops. And again, this is where Stratosphere UX comes in. You can do before and after comparisons of workspace performance. Are users complaining? Stratosphere UX's data can help you sort out the real true issues from users' biased reactions. You can get through troubleshooting faster and ensure all problems at all levels are addressed. And you can make sure that all users have the kind of high-performance workspaces they need for that digitally transformed organization, and no gaps in delivery. And finally, you can use the rich, deep, detailed metrics data to continually optimize and improve the environment, as well as to control costs as you go along. So this is sort of the back end here: troubleshoot, optimize, and enhance. So let's recap those benefits of having workspace visibility. Okay, so the first one, again, like I said, those new workspaces, they can be validated to make sure they're working as good or better than what you left. Okay, issues, even with multiple root causes, they can be identified and addressed very quickly with 360-degree views and the deep dive metrics that you get from Stratosphere. All operating systems and applications are known, patched, and maintained. Users who should not have admin rights are identified, and that can be addressed. And unauthorized applications and processes can be identified, and that can be addressed. And your help desk can perform critical actions because they have comprehensive data and information, and they don't need any longer to consult the storage or the network specialists about other parts of a shared infrastructure. They have all they need to troubleshoot themselves. And workspace uptime is optimized for all workers. And infrastructure can be monitored and optimized over time for performance, cost, and management benefits. So before we wrap up, I'd just like to go over our solutions again to cover their overall use cases, because clearly our solutions do go beyond the use case of digital transformation. And so you should understand all the benefits that you get from deploying these in your environment, in addition to the role they play in helping you move quickly towards the workspace provisioning for a digital transformed environment. So for Profile Unity, we have a number of use cases and benefits here. So first and foremost, because you get to leverage the different types of architectural modes for virtual desktop infrastructure, you can lower the virtual desktop infrastructure costs, okay? So if you need to leverage non-persistent desktops versus persistent, our solutions enable that. And so obviously you have a quicker recovery time, you have a lower cost of deployment, okay? In here, you're avoiding user downtime for a number of reasons, partly and in the main because users can log off of one system and log back in on another system with no disruption in their user settings or user personalization or anything. They're logging into exactly the same setup with the same user profile and same applications on any other machine. So it's all consistent and compatible. You get that Windows operating system compatibility, which is so critical today. You set the stage for disaster recovery, obviously, because once again, your users log out of one machine for whatever reason, they can log into a whole different sets of machines if need be. And you're going to eliminate those silo overlaps. So, once again, the platform vendors all have their versions of application layering, and they all have their versions of profile management. But the fact of the matter is that some of it's basic and some of it, quite frankly, doesn't work that well. So when you standardize on Profile Unity and you standardize on FlexApp, what you're getting is a best-of-breed solution that basically works across all these silos. And finally, with Profile Unity, you have the opportunity for granular policy management. That's a lot easier to deploy than Active Directory group policy with Profile Unity's context-aware filters and with triggers and a lot of the features that are built into this particular solution. So a lot of good benefits here for Profile Unity. Because FlexApp as application is sophisticated application layering and can deliver applications on demand without them being put into the desktop image, okay, you're going to simplify application management greatly, okay? Once again, you get to support those non-persistent architectures if you're launching for VDI infrastructures. You've got that Windows operating system compatibility across Windows OS. And you're simplifying those base images. You're taking applications out. You're going to need fewer golden images to manage and modify, which is going to greatly reduce the management burden. You get to update application delivery. You can install and deploy and deliver an application pretty rapidly through FlexApp. And then again, you set the stage for business continuity because you're not having to rebuild whole systems or whole rebuild desktop images or basically repurpose them over and over again. You've got your applications are being controlled, of the vast majority of them are being controlled separately and basically can be delivered as needed. So you're kind of pulling them out of the mix, and therefore that can support a true business continuity program for your organization. Stratosphere UX has a number of very key use cases. The first is onboarding. So when you want to move from one platform to another, Stratosphere UX allows you to take the measurements and allows you to create a very sophisticated, polished strategy for moving from one to the next, so that you're doing it in a deliberate way and you're doing it in an informed way, as opposed to just sort of making the shift and hoping for the best, okay? Diagnostics. This is where Stratosphere UX shines, with just the sheer scope of comprehensive and detailed metrics data, okay? No other solution on the market today comes close to Stratosphere UX in its ability to diagnose the problems in your virtual desktop environment or cloud desktop environment as Stratosphere UX does. It can go across, it can go deep, up and down, it's vertical, horizontal, in every single way. It's going to look at all the levels of your infrastructure, and it's going to help you pinpoint the true root cause of the problems in that environment and help you troubleshoot very, very rapidly. So you not only clear away one set of problems, you can do that deep dive all the way down into all the different layers of your infrastructure to make sure that you're addressing everything that could be a potential problem in that environment. You just get that application inventory and you know what users need to use what. It's going to help you set that application strategy so that you can, once again, limit the number of applications that are approved for your organization and ensure that those applications that should never make it into your environment don't make it into your environment. We talked about help desk support. This is where, once again, your help desk admins get all the information they need to quickly troubleshoot in that environment. PC Lifecycle Extension. We've done this in a couple ways here. First is that you get information about your machines and all of the specs on those machines so that you understand, or you can figure out if you can maybe extend the life cycle in some ways by repurposing them and reusing them. Because workspace environment, like a virtual workspace environment, some costs can be recovered by using thin clients or zero clients. So it could be that older PCs can be used and sort of repackaged in that way, reused in that way. So this information you get from Stratosphere is going to help you make that determination. But also there's a feature within Stratosphere called Optimizer, which actually allows older PCs to work better. It essentially optimizes and allocates resources to those functions that are in the forefront that the user is actually actively using. And so they get priority over any other process or anything else that may be running in the background. And in that case, the feeling to the end user is that that desktop is running much better and performance is much more responsive. And finally, that license cost recovery. So when you know what you're running, and as we said before, both known and unknown. So once you find those unknowns, you can start addressing that. And even when there's certain software, maybe certain applications are running in your environment, and you realize that those users don't actually need those applications, that they're maybe part of a bundle or a package, and you've been paying for that, but you really don't need to. And then you can get very fine-tuned in your application strategy and deliver only those applications, a very limited number of applications that are the absolute required applications. So you have that opportunity to save on those licensing costs, as well as, quite frankly, enhanced security, because applications can be a point where you can have some sort of like invasion, or somebody could be targeting them. So what you want to do is you want to really create that application strategy to reduce the number of applications to what's absolutely needed, and you want to make sure they're all known and approved. So this, as I said, allows you to regain some costs, and that allows you enhanced security. So with that, we're kind of coming to the end of our presentation. And, you know, the purpose of this presentation today was basically to give you an overall view and talk specifically about how our digital workspace management solutions can help you make that transition to next generation workspaces in a digital transformation kind of scenario, okay? But the presentation is always going to be sort of limited. So what we did was we went back to our engineers and our developers, and we picked their brains, and we got a lot of the benefit of their experience and their understanding of these cycles and these things that are happening in companies. And we put them into a white paper so that we could provide you with a much deeper and comprehensive real world overview of what it takes to evolve your workspace environment to achieve your overall business goals. So this white paper is done and it's available on our website, and we will be sending out follow-ups from this presentation today in order to provide you with information about where this white paper is and other resources. So with that, we've concluded our presentation today, and we'd like to open up the floor for questions. And hopefully, as you've had questions throughout this presentation, you've been putting them into the chat window, and we've been keeping track of them. And we'll take a few minutes now to just go over them and respond to any inquiries you have, either about Liquidware or about digital transformation or about any of the points that we raised on the presentation today. So I want to, again, thank you for all joining me today, and let's just open the room for questions now. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Grace. Before we go ahead and get into those questions, just a reminder, you can post your questions via the question or chat window, and we'll cover all of those as we get them in. Also, we did record today's session, so you can keep an eye on your inbox for a link to that recording and a link to that white paper that Grace mentioned. I'm gonna go ahead and check and see what kind of questions we have. Here's one that we can start with. During the pandemic, did you see any companies run to the cloud for workspaces yet return to on-prem?
I would say, so I mentioned during the presentation, can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear, Grace.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, so the pandemic kind of set in, was it March of 2020? That's when I think everybody just really realized this was a serious situation. And we did notice at that point in time that there was a big pickup with customers coming to us for work from anywhere. And we had a lot of work in quickly responding to them, because obviously there was a real sense of urgency at that time. They went down many paths to deploy work from anywhere. Obviously, a lot of the approaches that they took in order to deploy these types of workspaces had to do with unique use cases. So there wasn't necessarily an apples to apples. It wasn't like one size fits all. It was very much they were tailored. Okay. But I think from what we were seeing and from what we've experienced actually over the past 2 years, because that whole trend extended into 2021 as well, is that they're staying with cloud. A lot of them leveraged cloud for these deployments, and they're staying with cloud because they recognized that this was sort of a wave of the future, and they recognized that the benefits went beyond just simply the work from anywhere deployment, that there was inherent advantages to using that model and sticking with that model. And I think a lot of it had to do with, once again, just going back to this increased mobility requirements for their users, this ability for them to get work done more closely to the requirements, so like, for example, in healthcare, they were working closely to patients and patients' bedside or at the patient's home. Law enforcement is able to take their technology to the streets. Logistics and transportation was taking their technology, wherever they went and to transport. entertainment, is basically, taking their technologies right to where their customers are, and getting real-time information about what's going on. So this is work from anywhere wasn't any kind of departure from what a lot of companies were trying to do. It accelerated the trend, and that's what we saw. So I just want to let everybody know I'm also joined on this call by my colleague at Liquidware, Jason Smith, who is, you're probably very familiar with him. He's done a lot of these webinars. And he may have some insights into this question as well. So I'm going to open it up to him for his response if he feels he wants to add anything. Jason?
Thanks, Grace. This was a wonderful topic today. Yeah, I would echo what Grace has already said, is that we did see many that were scrambling, running to the cloud just to have business continuity. And then as the year progressed last year and then into this year, we saw many companies looking for a hybrid approach. And now they have many of our customers have rearranged the way they offer their workspaces to be dynamic. So if they log on, if a user logs on to their physical PC, or if they're in the office on maybe their Citrix session, or if they are at home and they need a remote PC, they have opened up those options. And some technologies have come of age too since this time, with Microsoft AVD and now Windows 365 Cloud PC coming, that are giving more organizations more options. So the takeaway was that a lot of organizations don't want to be caught again unprepared, and many of them have taken steps to do so and to be far more flexible with the way that their users can access a desktop and remain productive no matter what happens.
Great. Before we go to the next question, there was another question that came in that I can field real quick. And someone asked if we can send out the PowerPoint. So yes, we'll send a link to the presentation, not just the recording, but also the slides in that follow-up email. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. Someone did ask, though, also, how often does Liquidware find enterprises that take advantage of using the suite of tools on traditional/physical desktops, or is it almost always targeted towards a virtualized environment?
It's across physical and virtual, and now cloud. As I kind of emphasized probably over and over again, we support all platforms. And I think in a way, even now, it's kind of surprising to us that some companies don't think that we support physical desktops. But a Windows desktop is a Windows desktop is a Windows desktop, or probably should quit using the term desktop and refer to these as workspaces, because they're less hardware bound, and obviously they're more virtual or more software oriented. But the fact of the matter is that it's the same for us. It's the same technology, and as we work with native formats, it's the same technology. And so it's pretty much, I would say, especially within the last 3-4 years, it's pretty much 50-50, if not more. It's the company comes to us, it's the use case, and a lot of times they will come to us for the virtual side of things, but then we explain to them that we work across all of them, and then their brains start working, and oh, well, can we bring these benefits over to the physical side? And so we just sort of we get extended into their environments that way. So it's pretty even at this point.
And we've lately added support for offline use cases too. So on the Profile Unity and FlexApp side, Profile Unity's always had the ability to have a user go out of the office with their laptop, and then when they are in the office, or when they connect to the corporate domain and authenticate through AD, everything syncs up. So the profile that was offline syncs up to the profile stored on the network, syncs up to all the user preferences, or the user policies that the administrator has set forth, and that's been in order. With FlexApp, we've been able to support online physical desktops, but here just a couple months ago, if you followed Liquidware, you see that we now support offline use cases for FlexApps. We have a new technology called FlexApp One, so you can take your FlexApp containers and do a final step to it to convert it to a FlexApp One, and then you can distribute it to people out in the field and use it for that use case. So now our entire stack works across the board for physical, including laptops.
Great, we have another question here. Can Stratosphere UX develop an asset inventory that can be compared with other desktop management solutions?
Stratosphere UX basically is a self-contained monitoring, pardon me, self-contained monitoring solution. And what I mean by that is that we use our own agents, and we define those agents, and we define the metrics that we're looking at with those agents. So, so the first part of the answer to that question is that we have our own separate metrics, and we're very sure of the accuracy of them. So very often Stratosphere extends the metrics that you would get in pretty much any other solutions, particularly if it's a systems management or systems monitoring type of solution. As we have always been oriented to the user experience quality. So we've extended our range of metrics so that we can really fine tune the measurements for the user experience and quickly pinpoint exactly sort of what system or what technology is failing or compromising that user experience. Having said that, the data in Stratosphere UX is extremely compatible with other systems management and systems monitoring tools, and we have a very good track record of supplementing other systems information and data with Stratosphere data. We have an integration with ServiceNow, that's obviously an ITSM type of tool. But the fact of the matter is that Stratosphere has an API which can be leveraged to integrate Stratosphere data into other systems or pull other systems into Stratosphere if need be, or into sort of some separate funnel where you can actually link up the two different types of information for analysis or for a deeper dive or for special reporting purposes. So it's extremely compatible with other monitoring solutions, other management solutions.
Someone asked, do you support Linux endpoints?
We do.
Yes. Go ahead,
So
Grace.
I just quickly on the Stratosphere side, so we basically, when we're saying all computers or all users, all machines, that includes the Linux platform, Mac OS platform, in our in the metrics that we gather. But Jason's about to tell you on the Profile Unity FlexApp side.
For Profile Unity and FlexApp, those are Windows solutions, but on the Stratosphere side, as Grace said, what I was going to add to that was examples. A Linux operating system like Ubuntu or Linux Mint, fully supported because we have agents that work on Linux and those variations of that. And then IGL OS, Stratodesk OS are both supported with unique agents. And then we have custom agents for other platforms as well. That oftentimes that generic Linux agent will work in those cases, but we have custom agents because of their flavors of Linux and their unique in the unique way that we can grab performance metrics from those endpoints. And the beauty of that is that oftentimes Linux desktops might be used for a work from anywhere solution, or they're used by developers or offshore or a variety of ways, but they're a lot of times accessing a Windows environment. But when we also have this agent that is purpose built for the Linux endpoint, that first mile of connectivity, which is very important. And so Stratosphere will actually give you a composite user experience metric for all those experiences that the user has, including that first mile and then the Windows session itself, including network performance and a lot of other things. So it's the most complete picture you're going to get for UX.
Excellent. Someone just asked, how do SaaS applications fit into digital transformation and work from anywhere?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll be glad to take it, Grace.
Yeah, you can go ahead. I mean, to me, the short answer here is that it's an application is an application is an application. It's just tracking it or measuring its experience on a SaaS application is different. But Jason?
Yep. So oftentimes we can take a look at those browsers because SaaS applications, they most commonly use a browser, so we can track the user experience related to that and the performance of it. But additionally, our suite, Profile Unity also can allocate SAS shortcuts, drop them off on the desktop. So if you want to put web-based shortcuts to your group of sales individuals for Salesforce.com, just put it in the context aware group, create an icon, put it in the context aware group, and they'll have a Salesforce.com icon right there on their desktop. Or that was just an example, any SaaS application. So the finance department and other ones that are using SaaS applications can get those. When used with Profile Unity and FlexApp, really it starts to centralize the way that you apply applications to the desktop, whether they're SaaS based through these shortcuts and context aware that I mentioned, and also natively integrated with other applications such as those that we can deliver through FlexApp, because they look native to the OS. So if you have plugins and other things that need to coexist with SaaS apps or export, import from SaaS apps, the chances are great that a FlexApp-based application that's been rendered of that plugin will work seamlessly in that environment while keeping those base images clean.
Excellent. Someone asked about, speaking of apps, they asked how our application layering solution is different from others.
Oh, that's a great question. I actually have our white paper for FlexApp open on my desktop and editing it. So you'll be able to see a brand new version of that hopefully later this week. So FlexApp is on my mind, but it's different because it's not application isolation, which came of age in the early 2000s with Microsoft App V. It was a Softricity product there that they bought, and then later with VMware ThinApp. And those provided isolation. Well, FlexApp layering really attaches an application and makes it look and act native in that environment. So that's the big head and shoulders over application isolation. And then when you compare it against the closest competitor in the market, maybe you have access to Citrix app layering, and that was the old Unidesk product that they acquired. I would describe that as a different method of layering. It's very much tied to the operating system. You're layering for one environment, a Citrix environment at that, usually, although they'll work in VMware environments too, but you are layering for a specific operating system. Now, if you upgrade that operating system from Windows, say 10 to 11, the apps, as were the case for Windows 7 to 10, for example, they break. You have to repackage those. And FlexApp is much different in that area. If the app itself supports the new operating system, which 9 times out of 10 or more they do, all you need to do is test it and allocate it to those new desktops and not repackage. And that's one of the most time-consuming things with Citrix app layering, for example, is packaging apps. So you don't have to ever repackage with FlexApp if the app supports it. And upgrades are easier, and the applications remain dynamic or elastic, if you will, whereas Citrix app layering is more tied to the image. Good solution. If you have access to it, try it. We're great partners with Citrix, and we actually have a few customers that use Citrix app layering and FlexApp because they use Citrix app layering to help manage their base images, their operating system, for example, and maybe some core apps. So that's the best comparison I can draw.
Excellent. Here's a question. Where do you see Windows 365 Cloud PC fitting for enterprises?
Another good question. So if you know the history there of the last few years, Microsoft announced Microsoft AVD, was WVD, Azure Virtual Desktop. It's really a turnkey solution for the most part. You have to do some work to set up your own unique environment and everything for it. And it seems to be perceived by the market as the enterprise use case for multi-session Windows 10, the successor to older technologies like RDS and other solutions out there that mimic that. So AVD may be the one that enterprises, I believe, choose because the customization in there and the power of it, whereas Windows 365, although it does have an enterprise flavor with Cloud PC, it is the turnkey and flat fee pay-as-you-go desktop. So with AVD, there's some unknown variables, what your monthly bill might be for the machines that you're using. And with 365, it is a flat fee pay-as-you-go, a lot more like Amazon Workspaces, for example, but straight from Microsoft. So the turnkey is the phrase there, and what may be of an attractive nature to an organization. I'm not saying enterprises won't adopt it, but it may be slow to see adoption because of the customization and the power of AVD that is already offered in the market. But it promises to answer some needs into some specific areas of the market. And by the way, our suite supports Office 365 and Cloud PC right out of the box, and has we actually added in more reports for it just this week, and you can choose with confidence, knowing that whatever desktop that you're on for Windows, Windows is Windows to Liquidware, just like Grace said, we'll support it.
All right, someone asked, does Stratosphere UX gather detailed info on the client's WAN infrastructure, such as WAN link speeds, utilization, saturation, etc.?
That is a good question. And yes, we do. We're looking at all levels of the network.
Yep. One of the things we added in, even on that side in the last year, was additional work from home type metrics, like your Wi-Fi access. We can estimate how far you are away from your endpoint. And this is something that we've seen the competition imitate very quickly, something that we did.
There is, the network connectivity all the way, within, I should say, on premises, within, the campus or within the office setup, and extending all the way out is critical information to have, especially with regarding a digital transformation. So that information is part and parcel. It's like the bread and butter type of metrics within Stratosphere. So yes, it's collective within our network categories.
Excellent. All right, I'm only seeing one more question right now, so if anyone has any last questions, they can feel free to put them via the questions or chat window. Otherwise, we can, this one actually might be a good one to wrap up on. And they say, I'd like to talk about this digital transformation topic with my internal teams. Do you have any other materials that can help me discuss that with them?
Well, yes, we do have a white paper that takes the same material and it extends it. It goes into a lot more detail. We also have some ROI materials that I think would be beneficial for anybody on this call to look at as well. I mean, Jason has been working on that side of it, and I've been working on the collecting the information from. We really get a lot of good information from our engineers, from our support teams, and from our developers. So what you'll get in that the digital workspaces white paper is essentially our collective Liquidware sort of collective knowledge over the past good 5 years and dealing with a lot of these different environments. So that will definitely extend this presentation. And the flip side of that is, as I said, those ROI materials that Jason has put together can actually get you pretty quickly into understanding how you can recover costs and how you can essentially save total cost of ownership and immediate return on investment by just simply sort of changing your IT strategies and your IT culture. So Jason, anything else to?
Yeah, I was going to mention that if you're interested in the ROI piece, knowing what we can save your organization for, best return on investment, lower your total cost of ownership. How many buzzwords could I put in there, right? But this is important. Under COVID, we saw many of our customers say, look, I see the need for the solutions. I know it's going to make my users more productive, but I also need a budget approval. And so our ROI shows you black and white how each of our 3 solutions and the whole suite can help you with the digital workspace approach. And to engage with that, I was going to say, on our website, it's easy to find. Just Google Liquidware and ROI, and you will land on that website and that web page, and you can get started where we'll help you with a custom ROI example for your organization.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jason and Grace, for handling all these questions. We'll make sure that all those links, including that one for the ROI calculator, is in the follow-up email that we'll be sending out in about a day or so from this once the recording is processed and post. posted, so keep an eye on your inbox for a link to that. Otherwise, feel free at any point in time to always reach out to us at sales@liquidware.com. We'll make sure that your questions get addressed to the appropriate person, and we can always make sure someone follows up with you. So with that being said, thank you, Grace and Jason, for bringing us through today's presentation and answering all of our questions. Thank you all for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you another time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.